Hi, Jeremy here, Modern Vitality. In today's video, we're taking a look at a brand new way to understand lab testing. This is extremely important. If you're dealing with any kind of complex chronic inflammatory health condition, the fibromyalgia, the Lyme disease, the mold exposure, all these types of diagnoses, right? We've also got chronic fatigue syndrome, adrenal fatigue, candida, reactivated Epstein-Barr, long haulers, mast cell activation syndrome, anything autoimmune. I mean, there are a ton of these conditions. These are just the top ones off the top of my head, right? But if you're dealing with anything like that, then you've likely had some labs run, some lab testing. And I want to share with you, this is a little bit counterintuitive, but I find that if you really want to understand labs and what's going on and what that means, right? Your actual big leverage things that you can take away from that and make some changes to your health, then you have to expand your perspective. So let's get started. So to really understand this, I think the best thing to do is share an experience I had where I reframed something. And what that did was it took a lot of the pressure off. And what that thing is testing, right? And I'm not talking about lab testing right now. I'm talking about testing like in school. Do you remember going to school? And then there would be final exams or midterms or whatever it was, SATs, all these things, right? These tests can feel like a pressure cooker for a lot of people. So follow me here. We're going to go to school, then we'll come back to lab tests and come back to health. I promise this is going to come full circle here. But one of the things I realized, especially with people who get testing anxiety, right, around like the SATs and all that, is that their perspective is too limited, meaning they're too self-centered in their perspective. Ooh, right? A triggering thing. This is not an aggressive statement. This is the truth, and I'm going to back this up. Okay, if we think about the test I take, and the grade on the test is a reflection of me, right, the individual who took the test, then there's a lot of pressure. I want to perform well on the test so that I look like I know what I'm doing, so that I can have some kind of high grade, right? And if we get bad grades, that's a bad reflection on me, the test taker, yeah? But in reality, if you zoom out, that's not the whole story. In fact, tests are not testing the test taker, right? Tests are not testing the student. Tests are testing the system. Okay, think about that. I'm going to explain this, I'm going to unpack it, and then I'll let you think about it, because imagine you're the person running the school, right? And actually a lot of my patients and clients I've worked with are educators, right? So this is actually something where you may work in that kind of field, who knows? But imagine you're running a school and you're trying to educate students. That's your goal, is to educate students, right? So you want the kids coming through to be learning things. Well, how do you measure that, right? How do you measure your efficacy? Tests, right? You test the outputs. You test, hey, did the information get to the kids' heads, right? And what that means is, when you get test grades back, is that you're actually measuring the efficacy of the system, of the school that you've created. Now the students and their willingness to show up and how motivated they are, right? That's going to be a factor. There are going to be some kids who come through who are just naturally gifted. They lean more towards academics. They're really good learners. There are going to be kids who come through that have other skills, right, that don't translate well to academics, which is totally fine. Not everybody's going to be getting the same grades on the test. There's going to be a bell curve. And some of it has to do with, the individual student's abilities, interests, that kind of thing, right? But that's not all of it. That's not the whole picture. That's just one piece of a larger system. We're also looking at what kind of educational material is delivered. How is it delivered? How much homework there is? What's the timing of it, right? How many different classes do they have? How scattered are their minds? All these things that you create, plus the culture of the school, right? And there's going to be other factors too. It gets really, really big, right? When you start looking at whole systems. This is why the test grade isn't really about the student. The test is a representation of how well the whole system is working together. And it's just one quantitative output. So this really helps with test anxiety, because for students, so this is a little side benefit of this video, right? If you know anybody that's struggling with testing anxiety, you can explain this to them. Actually, go in for the test. They're not testing you, they're testing themselves through you, right? You're just one student of many who's going to be showing how well this institution is working, right? And go in there and be honest, give an accurate, try your best to give an accurate reading so that when they get the test scores back, they can see how well they're doing and what needs to change, right? Now the pressure is not on that student anymore. This SAT score doesn't determine the track of your life, right? Take that pressure off. You'll do a lot better. So there's my aside on that. Now, when it comes to lab testing and healing, you get this lab test back. Oh, this is a problem. This is high. This is low. Problem, problem, problem. And what's going on? That frame in your mind and the frame of whoever my colleague practitioner is who's reading through that lab test, it's a limited frame. They're looking at it in the context of you. These are your numbers, right? These are your scores. These are your results. Here we've assessed your system in this little box, and these are all the problems of it. right? However, I would offer an expanded view. And when I mentor other practitioners, these are the kinds of things that we start to look at here. And I know that this channel and these videos are for people who are struggling with complex chronic health conditions, right? But I also know that a lot of my colleagues like to kind of peek in and see what I'm up to. So for those of you watching that are other practitioners, keep this in mind, okay? This will change your practice. But be able to reframe the test results, because we're not just looking at the outputs of one human organism. We're looking at that one human as the whole system of our culture. Right? So everybody getting lab tests. If you start to look and you go, oh, Americans, right? We're overweight, high blood pressure, a lot of diabetes, heart disease, all these things. That's not any one individual's fault or problem. Just like if you had a bunch of kids failing math tests, right? Oh, this school district, boy, nobody gets good at math. Well, maybe it's not a problem with the students. Maybe we need to look at that system, right? That's kind of creating these outputs. We need to look upstream. So if you're trying to get your health back, right, and you see your lab test and you go, oh, wow, I've got high inflammatory markers, so I should take anti-inflammatories, right? Maybe, right? But also maybe we need to look upstream and go, what are these cultural factors? What are the cultural driving forces that you've subconsciously picked up just by existing here within this culture, right? These subconscious glitches in your belief system, and that's what drives your behaviors and your sense of identity. And maybe there are things that we can do, right, that require some difficult work. It's not easy, but to start to assess how much of your behavior and your goals and your lifestyle and what you choose to eat and how you handle stressors, right? All these things, I can make a massive list for you, okay? How do all those things get formed? And where are they coming from? And how many of them are your conscious decisions versus what you inherited within the cultural system within which you were born? And within a smaller microcosm of that is like maybe your local community, your family unit, your peer group, right? If you have a job, like your coworkers, all these different cultures and microcultures you're exposed to, there's a sum total of that, right? And when you look at your lab test, isn't this cool? When you look at your lab test, that is showing you the results, the output of the sum total of all those cultures. Because the lab test primarily, I mean, sure, there's a little bit of genetics, right? That's nowhere near the end of the story, though. We have so much wiggle room in terms of what we do, how we live. Real medicine mostly is like lifestyle medicine in terms of getting the right kinds of nutrition, taking out problem behaviors, problem activities as much as we can, getting exercise, right? The appropriate kind of exercise. And I know it gets complex with illness, right? If you have fibromyalgia or something like that, your inflammatory processes don't work the same way as normal people. So you can't exercise like normal people, right? Not yet anyway. Not in stage 1, not in stage 2, but usually you get to like stage 3, especially stage 4, and you can start to exercise more because you'll have your inflammatory processes are more dialed in. And I've talked about this in other videos, right? I don't need to go into this here too much. But the point is, when you see your lab results, right? Or even softer than that, when you feel your qualitative, right? Quantitative lab results, like numbers, quantitative. When you feel your qualitative symptoms, fatigue, brain fog, weird pains, floating pains, wandering pains, trouble sleeping, sex drive issues, right? Digestive trouble, anxiety, depression. Did I say anxiety? Oh yeah, what about anxiety, right? You start feeling that, all that starts adding up, ramping up. Those are all signs, right? That's also feedback where we can look and say, hey, some of this comes from you, sure. But guess what? You're also part of larger cultural forces. And when you zoom out and you start to look at a whole culture and they have all the same symptoms and all the same problems that are prevalent and widespread, and when we see all these autoimmune issues and all these complex alphabet soup type health conditions are more and more prevalent in our society, right? That's not feedback on the individual people. That's feedback on what the culture, what the invisible forces of culture are doing by shaping belief, by influencing behavior and identity. You have to understand this. Take some of the pressure off yourself with the lab test. And here's my trick, right? Here's how we can frame this. I would offer you that you can de-emphasize some of the blame for some of this, right? And say, okay, a lot of this is cultural, some of these things, I didn't choose to do this, right? It's just kind of been habitual, or I didn't think about it and I wound up in this position, right? And then sometimes you have to understand your triggers and certain things that set you off, that's work we do like within our vault, right? I have interactive videos. It's for members of my group to go through, which I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. But you want to basically take an assessment of your whole situation and go, how much of this is kind of happening to you, right? And so you can start to take some of the guilt, blame, shame, and all that off of yourself and stop beating yourself up. How did I get in this mess? What am I doing wrong, right? Just cut the self-talk like that. Cut it out. It's not going to help you. right? And we can actually look and go, listen, these are larger cultural forces. This is like the movements of the ocean. And you're wondering why your boat's going up and down, right? What am I doing with my boat? But you're on an ocean. That's what's going, you're on stuff that moves. That's why you're moving this way. When we have a culture that emphasizes short-term gratification, maximizing your dopamine through junk food and junk entertainment, junk information, high stress culture, right? All these things, they don't add up to creating health, right? If we push it, we're always looking at bright lights and we're always trying to stay up as late as possible. We're always trying to biohack our way to maximum productivity or whatever it is. This is what we get, right? We get results, and the results are we get burned out. The body starts to break in different ways, and that can lead to different symptoms as the body's asking for help. Learning how to interpret your symptoms is a skill. It's a teachable skill. That's something I train a lot of the people I work with on, because then they have an instant diagnostic. They know what's going on with their body. Their intuition becomes stronger, and then they can actually change it right away. Once you have that dialed in, you're off to medical independence is where you're headed. So first thing to do is de-emphasize. I know it's going to sound crazy because I'm all about empowerment and accountability. I am. But the first thing you can do is de-emphasize some of your personal responsibility and pressure. So when you see these lab reports and the numbers and here's the problems and all that, don't start freaking out, beating yourself up. That's just like the kid at school getting test anxiety, right? First step, if you're feeling that way, is to go, okay, how much of this is my active decision and how much of this has been passively happening to me via culture, right? Now that I've taken some of the pressure off, now, where can I expand my active involvement here? How much power can I now take? How far can I shine my flashlight into the darkness of the subconscious cultural conditioning? How much space can I start to occupy in terms of who I am, what I actually want, what my health decisions are, right? Because then what happens is we start to find out a lot of self-sabotage and some things that we are choosing, right? They're called secondary gains. I've got videos about that. I speak about that a lot. It comes up a lot in our group. It's very important you start to identify that stuff fearlessly. A lot of people have it. A lot of the secondary gains come from cultural conditioning too. So this video is not about blaming culture and not owning our health. What it is, it's about first looking and going, okay, how much of this is cultural? And I would offer you a lot, right? A lot. There's millions and millions and millions of people that have the same types of health disharmonies that you have if you're watching this video, right? But just because something's common doesn't mean it's healthy, right? And we have to evolve up and out of that. So if you want to get better, you will have to take accountability for your health. You will have to take accountability for your decisions. You will have to grow into the type of person who's not afraid to stick out from the culture, who's not afraid to go against the grain a little bit when it's getting results that are not good results, right? So just like if you were a student in a school with a really poor math department and your math, I'm getting these math grades and it looks like I'm horrible at math. Well, you are, but it's also because you're part of a culture that encourages being horrible or mediocre. So you're going to have to rise above that, and you're going to have to start studying yourself, and you're going to have to pull yourself up. And maybe in the process, you'll inspire some other people that way, right? And then you never know how that goes. It's the same thing with your health. So if you're not feeling good, right, it may not be your fault, okay? It might not be your fault. So if you're blaming yourself and beating yourself up, please, you can pause that. Let's first look and see how much of this has just been influenced upon you, put upon you. And now, instead of fault, let's look at ownership. How much of it can you take ownership over? Where can you find your leverage, right? Now, these are the types of specific questions that you're going to want to spend some time with. This isn't the kind of thing that just happens immediately, right? We're looking at a different mindset here. We're taking some of the pressure off because yes, you're going to get your lab results. And yes, you might take certain supplements to try to balance out some levels or whatever, but we need to look upstream. Where did that imbalance come from, right? And sometimes bodily imbalances come from things outside of your body and outside of your current area of control. Now, how much can we expand that area of control, right? How much can we start to take power over our situation? That is a very interesting question. And if you're dealing with a complex chronic health condition and you want to take more control over it, you want to empower yourself, there are steps to take. It's very important you do things in the right order. I know I speak about this all the time. Stage 1, immune system. Stage 2, digestive. Stage 3, neuroadrenal. Stage 4, blood circulation. Stage 5 is kind of a secret bonus area where we look at mitochondria and hormones, and that's where biohacking really shines, right? Those kinds of things. Supplementing, boosting. So why do this alone? We've got a group. It's a lovely group, Modern Vitality Solutions and Support. It's free to join as a guest. You'll find the link in the description box below this video. It's my group. I created it. It's the original solutions and support group, and it's a fantastic place to be. I'm in there every single day. You can ask me anything you want. I'll give you my perspective. We've got a vault full of interactive videos that'll help you fine tune where you can find your power, where you can start to take control of these factors so that you're not just chasing numbers on a lab report, right? I mean, that's a place to start. Maybe we all need some relief, right? But long term, if you want sustainable healing, you're going to have to start thinking bigger and looking bigger. And that's what we do in our group. I do have paid programs, right? It's free to join as a guest, but I do have paid programs. I value my time. I value the people I work with. I'm not cheap to work with, absolutely. But if this is something you're open to, or you want to at least know more about what we're doing, I would encourage you. You're invited. Fill out the application, join our group. It's totally free, right? You can come in as a guest and literally you get access to me every single day. You can get to be around all the people who are also guests in the group. You get to be around my paid international clients, right? And as they're working through the program, you can see what happens. Hey, one of these people doing great, sharing wins, getting their life back, going out dancing, etc. And all of a sudden they had a flare, they got hit with some mold spores or whatever it was. And you can see that happen in real time. It's very transparent. And you're going to be able to watch right there in a chat group how I'm troubleshooting with them and they're getting their way back to health. So even when we do get knocked off by life, by things we can't control, we still find those leverage points. It's a different way to think about it. Ultimately, I think it's the only way to think about it long term. If you want to be empowered, you've got to understand this stuff. Otherwise, you're going to be the victim all the time, right? So it's up to you. We do have a wait. The group gets cozy. The group gets full. I try to keep it to where I understand pretty much what's going on with everybody in there. So I like to have it pretty personalized, but that also means I keep the head count pretty low. So if there's a wait, there's a wait. There may be people ahead of you in line to get in, but just know when it's your fair opportunity. I will let you know. It could be a couple weeks, could be our next monthly cohort, could be 2 months, something like that. But I'll get you in just as soon as I can. And in the meantime, as always, subscribe to this channel, like this video, right? It helps me, sure. It helps the algorithm, yes. It helps other people find this kind of thinking, yes. But also what you're doing is you're training the internet to show you things that are important to you, right? When you interact like that, you are telling it what you want to see. So use that power wisely. All right, let's get you feeling better. Cheers.